Hello everyone, my name is BTB. I am the creator of another Heroes 3 mod, or AH3M. It is a hack of Heroes of Might and Magic 3. Many people may know me more for my Final Fantasy VI mod, Brave New World, and in fact the reason I'm making this video is because a lot of the people I have playing this, or want to get to play this, are people who have played Brave New World but have never played the original Heroes 3 at all. So this is going to be sort of just an introduction to the basics of the game and how it works, so I don't have to, keep giving the same spiel to people over and over again. If you have played the original Heroes 3 before, then you'll probably see some of the bigger changes that I make here. Though, again, it's nothing drastically different than the original game, just what I think is a better version of what it already was. You may notice that the campaign mode is missing. That is a future development item that I hope to get to down the line, but for now I'm focusing on single player maps, as you can see, or single session maps, I'm sorry. As you can see, I've got 11 of them, and I'm hoping to at least double that number in the near future, now that I'm done with the basic mechanics in the mod and I can just focus on additional content. You can also play on random maps as well, though the quality of random maps in this game is not really on par with what you'd expect from a game like, say, Civilization. So really, these standalone maps are where it's at. Real quick, we have the name of the map here, of course. This is the number of players here on the left, how many players are on the maps, and the size. Small, medium, large, or huge. The larger maps require a lot of time to complete. Medium maps are the most popular because those can usually be done in a single session. The next column over here indicates whether or not your choice of faction is, whether or not the faction is set for each color or not. We'll cover that in just a minute. Over here on the right, we have the victory condition. Most victory conditions are defeat all opponents, which is conquer every enemy, though there are some maps that have other conditions, such as flagging every mine or find an artifact. And finally, the last column over here is any restrictions that the map may have. The little dolphin indicates that the map is dry, so there's no sailing, and the water walk spell is not in there. And the little flying angel indicates that the two spells that let you bypass any obstacle on the map are banned because the map needs it for whatever reason. So, as you can see over here on the right, then we have a description of the map, as well as the victory condition, and then a description of whatever has been disabled. Allies and enemies, that by default it's every man for himself. The Allied Maps folder right here lets you play with teams. But by default it's just, free-for-all. And then down here we have the map difficulty, which is a setting on the map that just indicates how difficult that map is to play. For a first-time player, or just to get familiar with the mod, I usually recommend this one, Divided Lands, because it's a relatively easy map and it's a good one to kind of learn the ropes on. And then these chess pieces right here, what we call handicap level, is a player difficulty setting. And that is just the higher this goes, the fewer resources we start off with, and the more that the computer does. So this button down here, Time and Player Settings, is the second part of the setup that we can also get to just by double-clicking on the map itself. There are 4 players on this map, and I can change whichever one I am by clicking on these flags. And each player starts off in a different position and usually has different advantages or disadvantages based on it. If we had, as you can see, this defaults to setting everything to random, and if we had just clicked begin without coming to the screen first, then it would randomize everything, including which player it is. But normally we kind of want to pick what we are, at least to some degree. So your starting town, which as we can see here is random, though depending on the map it might be forced for each player. If we come over here, we can see the little restricted sign, and that starting town is forced for every player and can't be changed. But for divided lands, we can choose who we want to be. Let's see here. There's 9 factions. Each of them has different units and different heroes. I'm not really going to go too in-depth about them right here. Brief summary, though, is that the 3 good factions, these 3 on the top, tend to be more defensive, while the 3 evil factions, these 3 here in the middle, tend to be more offensive, with the ones here on the left being more physically oriented and the ones on the right leaning more towards magic. And finally, the 3 on the bottom kind of represent the extremes. There's Stronghold, which is extreme offense. There is Fortress, which is extreme defense. And then finally Conflux on the bottom right, which is just a purely magic faction. The first faction up here, Castle, is ideal for learning the ropes. It's what the original game pretty much forced you to learn with, and it's a good one to start off with. And then over here we see our heroes, now that we have our faction picked. Each faction has 2 different hero classes. One is might-focused and one is magic-focused. And then what your class is determines what your stats look like, and then what skills you can learn as you level up. Each hero also has a specialty, which is something they do better than the other heroes, which can either be that a specific unit is stronger, which we see mostly on the might heroes. A certain spell is stronger, which we see here on see the magic heroes down at the bottom, or a certain skill, like we have here with Sonya. So we'll go ahead and start off with Orin, and finally, our starting bonus can either be a little extra gold, a little more of a certain resource, or a random artifact. With all this picked, we go ahead and start our game. So here we've got our adventure map in the main screen, and a mini-map up in the corner. We can just sort of click and drag it around, either by dragging around the mini-map or just right-clicking the main map and dragging it around. Down here on the bottom we have our resources, how much we have of each, including gold, what day of the week it is. In the bottom right corner, this is information about whatever hero or town we have selected, and then just above it we have our buttons and then all of our heroes on the left and all the towns on the right. So, start off, let's open up our hero and learn a little bit more about him. There are 4 main stats: attack, defense, magic, and knowledge. Heroes do not participate directly in fights, but their attack and defense are both added directly to the stats of their troops, which we see down here. But heroes can, once per round of combat, cast spells, and magic increases the potency of those spells, while knowledge is your mana stat. Your spell points, as seen down here, is 10 times your knowledge stat. And we see over here, Orin's specialty is Pikeman, which is Castle's first level unit. Basically, just right-click on anything, and you will learn more about it. Especially when you're just learning how to play the game, it's good advice. And then down here, we see our hero skills. Every hero starts off with 2 and can have up to 8. And one of the 2 that we start off with is a skill that every hero in this class starts off with. In this case, every knight starts off with leadership, which increases our unit's morale. And then we also have armor, which reduces physical damage that we take. Whenever a hero levels up, a random stat is increased, and we are given the choice to either learn a new skill or level up an existing one. As you can see, we start off with basic in both of these, and skills can go up to expert and then master. Which stat goes up and which skills we learn depends on our class. And if we right-click on Orin up here, we can see that knights tend to get attack and especially defense, whereas not so much with either magic or knowledge. Leadership and estates are going to be the most common skills that we get offered, again with leadership being the skill that every knight starts off with. And then we see a list of other skills that we can commonly get, along with those that we probably won't be seeing on a knight. Down here we have our units. Every faction has 7 units associated with it, each of a different level. Higher level units are substantially stronger, but they're also more expensive and they tend to be recruited in smaller numbers. And although every unit is different, they're going to be roughly equal in power to any other unit from any other faction on the same level. Pikemen, for example, are the strongest, one of the strongest first level units out there, but they're going to be pretty much on par to fighting any first level unit from any other faction. And again, there's a lot of variety with units, but there's 3 basic types here that we actually see well represented with Castle's first 3 units. These are melee units, ranged units, which is our archer here, and then flying units. And they all have a kind of a rock, paper, scissors relationship, which kind of forms the basis of the combat we'll be seeing. Ranged units can defeat or at least severely injure melee units before they can come in range, but flying units are often a lot faster and they can come in more quickly to block them. Now, a ranged unit can't shoot if there are any enemy units adjacent to them, and most of them suffer a pretty severe penalty to their melee damage. And so you'll want to protect your ranged units with melee units, who are generally a lot bulkier than flying units are and can take out those flying units. And that's the long and the short of it. Each unit here is a stack, and the number indicates how many units are in the stack. We've got 20 pikemen, 4 archers, and 3 griffins. We can move our units around, and if we want, we can say split this stack into 2, either by holding shift and clicking on it, or using these little handy buttons over here to do a one-click stack split. The keyboard shortcuts are a lot easier, though. Shift splits them evenly, Alt will bring them all back into a single stack, and then holding Control just breaks off a single one. So here we'll see the pikemen stats, and again, the 5 and 6 are going to be their base stats, and then the numbers in parentheses are what are being added to them by both the hero stats as well as, in this case, the specialty in pikemen. Hero specialists will give extra attack and defense, and then more speed, damage, or health depending on what kind of unit it is. The melee units get more health, the flying units get more speed, and the ranged units get extra damage to kind of further reinforce that rock, paper, scissors relationship. The exception is level 7 unit specialists, who just get everything because level 7 units are far more powerful by several magnitudes than everything else. You might also notice that the pikemen are actually getting 1 more attack and defense than the specialty and Orin stats, and that's due to the fact that we're currently standing on grassland. Every faction has a native terrain associated with it, and troops from those factions get a small bonus when fighting in that terrain. This really doesn't come into play too much. The most important part of it is that when you have factions whose native terrain is very difficult to move through, like swamp or snow, then entirely homogeneous armies can move through those without suffering the movement penalty that any other army would. Speaking of entire armies being from the same faction, you might also notice that our pikemen have a pretty good morale. If we right-click here, part of that is coming from Orin's leadership that we saw earlier, but the other part of that is coming from the fact that all of our units are all castle units. As we play the game and continue, we'll have the opportunity to get units from other factions and kind of mix them into our army. But the more factions we mix in, the less morale we get. 2 factions is no bonus, and then 3 or more we start getting a morale hit. Positive morale means that our troops might get a second action in battle, but bad morale means they might lose their turn, which is something we try to avoid, because that's, not good. The sister mechanic to morale is luck, which we see over here. And luck, if you have a good luck, then your attacks might do double damage. On paper, luck seems kind of like an inferior version of morale because it does the same thing as getting 2 actions in it does, but getting 2 actions also means you can move twice. But it does have one advantage, and we'll get to that later on. Over here, we see Orin's equipment, or artifacts as they're going to be called. And because we picked the artifact starting bonus, we start with this Dwarven Shield, which gives us 2 defense. You see we can take it off, and it's affecting his defense over there. These are things that we'll find as we play, and they can end up having a pretty substantial effect on how our heroes perform, as well as making up for some of their shortcomings. We also have a spellbook, which, because Orin is a might hero, he does not start with any spells. If he were instead a cleric, which is Castle's magic hero, he would come with one. So let's look now at our town. Towns generate income, which, our gold stat over here, we have 15,000 gold to start off with, as well as things to buy, namely units from their individual dwellings and spells from the Mage Guild. Though we do start off with very little built. The only thing that we have built is our first level dwelling for pikemen, and no Mage Guild. We do, however, start with a tavern, which is over here on the far left. This is where we go to hire other heroes, and we get a friendly tip from the bartender that updates every day. There are 2 heroes in our tavern, and which ones appear will refresh every week. So every week we get a fresh set of heroes in here. Which ones we can appear depend on our starting faction, which I'm far more likely to get heroes, in this case Castle's heroes, knights and clerics, than anything else. Other classes might appear, but good factions like Castle won't see any evil heroes or vice versa. In this case, we have a cleric and a witch, which is a Castle hero. It's usually beneficial to have a second starting hero, so we'll go ahead and buy this cleric, but you'll notice we can't buy them because Orin is currently in the town slot that she would be occupying if we bought her. So if we move him from just visiting over into the garrison, we can buy ourselves Caitlin. Now, if we go ahead and click on her, you'll see that her stats are a lot more magic-focused than Orin's are, because she is a cleric. And while all knights start with leadership, all clerics come with the first aid skill, which increases the health of all of their units, as well as letting the medical tent heal statuses from your units. The medical tent is one of 3 war machines, which is a special kind of artifact that appears in battle. In this case, this one heals your units. And without the first aid skill, all it does is heal HP. War machines can be purchased from blacksmiths in towns, and which war machine the blacksmith sells depends on what kind of town it is. Castle's blacksmith sells ballistas, which are giant things that fire arrows into your enemies, because I know how to word good. So, Caitlin, being a magic hero, also starts with a spell. Now, there are 4 elements of spells. We've got air, earth, fire, and water, and there is her starting spell right there, Heroism. And if we right-click on it, we can learn a little bit more about it. It increases the morale of our units. Each spell requires, or I shouldn't say requires, but there are 4 skills, one for each element: air, earth, fire, and water. And without those skills, as you can see, the effect of this spell is pretty weak. It will only increase 1 stack's morale by 1, whereas if she has the water magic skill mastered, that will increase your entire army's morale by 3. There is also another magic skill called Wisdom. Without Wisdom, you are only able to cast low-level spells. As you can see, Heroism is a 2nd level spell that she starts with. Level 3 and higher spells require the Wisdom skill in order to be cast. So that is something that, as you can see, as a cleric, is going to be a common learn for her, along with air magic. But clerics are mostly focused on water magic, which is fitting for them since it's kind of a healing and defensive school. So, let's see. Back in our town, we can click on either the village hall, which is this thing right here, or this little button down here to pull up our build menu. Any town can build one thing every turn, and early in the game it's important to build up as much as you can. Now, building anything costs gold and resources. The 2 most common resources down here, wood and ore, are required to build pretty much anything. The 4 rare resources are required to build special buildings, the Mage Guild, and to buy 7th level units. Now, how much you'll need of each one is going to vary a lot depending on what type of town it is. As for what to build first, this is something that's going to vary a lot depending on who you talk to, and I myself put a lot of effort into balancing things, so there's not really a set build order you'll want to go with. That said, a good rule of thumb is to focus on income first, which is the town hall here. But you'll see we can't build it right yet because that's going to require a marketplace, so we will build that first for 5 wood and 500 gold. Marketplaces let you trade resources. If we go ahead and click on that, I can buy 1 piece of wood for 1,000 gold, or I can trade 2 crystal for 2 crystal for 1 piece of wood. There we go. And you'll get better rates the more marketplaces you control in different towns you own. We only have 1 right now, so we're getting the worst possible rates. So let's look at the map now. Let's put Orin back out up front. Let's look at our map. Heroes move around the map. They find treasure and resources and mines which generate resources. We fight random enemy units. We will run into other heroes eventually and fight them. And for most maps, the goal is to find every enemy town and conquer it. As for how to start off with, pretty much every map is going to start you off near resource generators for the 2 basic resources, wood and ore. And so if we just follow this road over here, we see an ore pit, which will give us 2 ore per day. And if we'll go ahead and pull Caitlin out of the town now, follow this road this way, and here's a sawmill, which will give us wood. We also see some loose wood lying here on the ground, so we can go ahead and grab that. Same thing with the ore. The heroes have a set amount of movement every turn, and you can probably see when I moved, that little green bar next to each hero went down. I hover over it, and that tells you exactly how many movement points I have left. How much movement it takes depends on a number of things. If you're moving along a road, it takes substantially less, and if you're moving through hostile terrain without a road, something like swamp or sand or snow, it's going to take a lot more. Another object that you'll see often near your starting towns are this thing, a learning stone. And this is basically a free 1,000 experience, which brings you up to level 2 for any hero who visits it. So that's going to be our next goal, is to go ahead and visit this. And as you can see, we don't have quite enough movement to get there yet for either hero. So we'll go ahead and click on this button down here to end our turn. So at the start of the next turn, we'll go ahead and send Orin on here. There's 1,000 experience, and as you can see now, we've leveled up. He gets +1 attack, which is to be expected. He's a knight, and then we can either level up our armor skill or get basic estates. If we're not sure, we can go ahead and double-click on this to go back here and right-click on him and get an idea for, as you can see here, estates is going to be a very commonly offered skill because he's a knight. And armor, of course, is a skill he already had, which is, again, a common skill for knights. So we're not really in danger of either one of these not popping up again, so it's more of a choice. This early on, estates can be helpful, but you are limited to only 8 skill slots for each hero, so something like that might be a waste on more of a main hero that you want to have focused on combat skills. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and take the estates. I've actually done myself a bit of a problem here. I don't think Orange... Okay, yeah. He can move diagonally around her. And let's see what Caitlyn gets. See, now archery is not a very common skill for clerics. It's not exactly rare, but it's not something I can expect to be seeing again. So that's something I'm probably going to want to take because it will increase the damage of your ranged units, and Castle has 2 of them. So we'll go ahead and grab that. The next object I'm looking at is this thing over here. Now this is something I'm not used to seeing near my starting town. These are stables, and these increase the maximum movement points for your hero by 400 every day for a whole week. Now this is actually a building that Castle can build, so this is not going to be very useful once we get that built. But had I chosen to play any other faction, that would be very appreciated, having that right there. And then this object over here is a windmill. Windmills give you a random resource once every week, so there's something you would just want to keep someone back here to go poke every week and get whatever they have to offer. And as you keep playing, you will come to recognize the various objects here on the map and what they do. And I'm not going to sit here and just go over what every single one of them does. Just kind of poke around and figure it out. What we're going to do now, what we want to do now is go around collecting the low-hanging fruit. The objects that we can pick up without getting into any fights, or at the very least fighting very weak things, like this treasure chest right here. Treasure chest, we get the option of keeping the gold, or getting rid of the gold and getting experience for it instead. Again, depending on who you ask, one of these may or may not be more useful than the others. It's really one of the eternal debates amongst the Heroes fandom. Nobody really can tell you for sure. So just go with whichever one feels right at the moment. I'm going to go ahead and go with the experience for Orin. That brings him up to level 2. And again, we have either armor or scouting. Scouting isn't exactly a common skill, so I'm probably not going to be offered it again, but I'm just going to go ahead and go ahead, level up armor. It's really good to have right now, and I don't want scouting. Had I picked scouting, it would increase my visibility radius, so I'd be able to see more into this fog of war over here. As I was saying, though, the idea is to go around and collect as much as you can without getting into too much danger. Though, if we're feeling up to it, say these units over here, for example, are goblins. These are first level stronghold units. So we can probably fight them without too much trouble, but it'll still be easier if we go around and get a little bit stronger before we do. So we'll take a couple of turns and do that. Again, trying to remember every turn to come back here to our town and build things. Especially early on, it's important to build out as much as you can, as early as you can. With the town hall, for example, that's going to increase our town's income from 500 to 1,000 every turn. And then once we get the income built, we'll probably want to focus on getting our unit dwellings built so that we can start to accumulate units in order to buy. As you can see, we get 12 pikemen every week, but those won't start accumulating until we actually have the dwelling built. So we're out of movement points for this turn. Go ahead and end it real quick. Just come around here and grab what we can. This thing right here. This is a temporary boost to our luck, just for the next fight that we have. We'll have a little bit more. So it's an object that's something worth poking every time you go by it. But this thing right here is a permanent upgrade to our attack. So that's something we want to have Oren come over here and get to as well, especially since he's our fighter unit. We'll go ahead and grab him over there. Come back to Tanagel now, and to build up our city hall, we're going to need a mage guild and a blacksmith. So we'll go ahead and build our mage guild. And we see that pop up over here. And these are the spells available. Which spells are available are, again, random, but depends greatly on what kind of town it is. For example, Castle Town is very likely to get Bless, which is a important first level spell that increases the damage, the damage of low level units. We also have Cure and Ice Bolt and a number of other things. So go ahead and pull this back over here. And this is a sister object to the windmills, whereas windmills give us random resources every week. Water Wheel gives us gold every week. So if you find one of those near where we start, we also want to make sure that we come to these every week to get what they have to offer us. And those are different than the mines here that give us 2 gold and 2 ore every turn as long as we have them flagged. You see my little blue flag on there? I don't need to keep going to them to give what they have to offer. So Oren, we want to come over here. But since we've already explored everything there is to see over here, and there's nothing else that we can do without getting into a fight, I'm going to send him back this way real quick. Again, remembering to come into our town, and we've built our mage guild, so the next thing we need is a blacksmith. So now when, as you can see, only visiting heroes can use the blacksmith. When one of them comes back into town, they can buy a blacksmith as well as some spells from the mage guild. And since Oren happens to be right here, I'll just go ahead and do that. So let's buy him a ballista. And we will pick him up a couple of spells. Which spells I want to get really depends on what magic skills I expect him to get. As we saw before, the effectiveness of spells is pretty weak if we don't actually have the associated elemental skill. But there are a few spells that are useful even without it. For example, this one here, Wizard Eye, is an adventure map spell. Most spells are combat spells that you can only use in a battle, but this one is what we call an adventure map spell. If we click on this button right here, it'll pull up our spell book, and something like this, Wizard Eye, it shows us a location of loose resources and artifacts on the map. And those are our benefits when we get air magic, if we get air magic. But even if we don't, this is still a useful spell to have. And as you can see, there's a whole bunch of stuff on this map to find. So pull on over here and keep looking around. Again, remembering to come back into town and build things every turn. Our city hall will now up us to 2,000 gold per day, so let's go ahead and get that built. And Caitlin can come back this way. We'll start exploring a little bit down here. Now day 6, I have a bit of a quandary. There is our capital, and that is the final gold producing building, which will up us to 4,000 per day. But we don't have quite enough to afford that. That's going to take us 2 more turns. So I can either build that now, or I can start building dwellings. I can build an archer tower, and I can build a griffin nest. We're on day 6 right now, and what happens is when we roll back over to the next week, all of our existing dwellings will get some more units in them. So if I buy an archer tower this turn, and then a griffin nest the next, then that means I'm going to have a lot of initial units to buy. But I'll be sacrificing the money to do it because it'll take me longer to save up to build the capital. So in this particular case, I'm going to go ahead and go with the units. So we're going to build our archer tower. You see the archers here. We get 8 per week. And we'll keep exploring, trying to stay out of the way of things. Again, I could probably fight them if I wanted to, but I'm trying to see what I can get before I do. There's this thing over here. This is a shrine. These sell spell scrolls. Now, a spell scroll will let you cast a spell even if you don't know it, and it will let you cast that spell at basic expertise, even if you don't have the skill. So they're pretty useful if it's a spell that you're not really expecting to get the skill for, or even learn in the first case. It also lets you cast it without the wisdom requirements if it's a level 3 or higher spell scroll, but this is just a Shrine of Courage, so it's going to be a basic level 1 spell. Sunray is nice, but I don't particularly want it at the moment, and plus I'm trying to save my money. Speaking of which, there's a treasure chest over here, and I might take the gold this time so I can hurry up and get to that capital, since, you know, I'll be losing money every turn I don't have it built. Right. Now, as you can see, Caitlin's got a little bit of movement left, but if I wasn't near a road, I might not have been able to move too much further. This little button right here will let us go ahead and make camp, and that'll just deplete all of our movement points for the turn. And if whatever movement points we have left, we'll get a little bit of MP back. The only other ways to get your mana back after using it to cast spells in battle are to end your turn in a town with a mage guild, and that will fully restore you. Or if you find an object on the map that does. And finally, there's a skill called Mysticism, which lets you naturally regenerate mana every turn. And that's explained here if you just right-click on spell points. Again, right-click on anything to learn, it really helps. So come back here, and we'll see. Let's go ahead and get our griffin nest now. So we're going to be getting 2,000 gold next turn. So next turn we'll have 8475 gold. That means that we need a little over 1,500 more gold in order to be able to buy our capital next turn. So there's a chest here, and that should give me enough. So I'm going to be taking the gold this time, so we can do that. And we're going to keep pressing on. And now when the week rolls over, we're going to be losing that bonus that we got from the stables. So Caitlin, without too much else to do right now, I'm just going to go ahead and park her right here so that you can see Hero's already visited the stables this week. But when we end our turn, again, she's got movement points left. If she was missing any mana, this little camp button right here would give her some back next turn. Exactly how much you get back isn't much. The main reason I made this button was that the game will warn you every time you try to end the turn with a hero who can still move. And that's kind of an annoying message to see if you're intentionally ending your turn early. So if you click on that, it just kind of... And the MP regen is just kind of an excuse to do it. So now, at the beginning of the next turn, I want her to go straight back to that stables, which she's already standing on. So if I click on this button right here, Activate Object, that will activate the object she's standing on without having to move off and move back on. The spacebar does the same thing, but the button's a little handier. And now I have enough gold to build a capital. At this point, I kind of want to send Orin home to get some units so he can fight something. Now, I've already bought him some spells, and I already bought him a ballista, so he doesn't necessarily need to go in the town, he just needs the units. So what I can do is I can have Caitlin run those units to him. I can click on these to buy them, or I can click on their dwelling here on the map, but there's also a little shortcut button that HD Mod adds that just kind of lets me buy out everything. This early on I kind of want to do things deliberately, so I'll buy what I can. Again, you see, I can't really afford too much anyway, so I may have to wait here another turn anyway. So that's what she's going to do. Park her ass right here. And now at the beginning of this next turn, I'll be able to afford a lot more things. But I also need to be careful, because if I buy too much, I won't be able to afford to buy anything. Which, well, as you can see, I already can't afford to buy anything. But that's okay. Right now it's more important to get the units. Buy everything I can afford, stick it on her, and we're gonna send her out to meet Orin. We'll stop by this window on the way. And what Orin's gonna do is he's gonna come on over here, and Caitlin is going to meet up with them. And now that they're meeting on the map, we can exchange units, we can exchange artifacts, and she's just going to dump everything she has on him. And, you know, she's just going to keep one Griffin. You can't have a hero with no units in their army. As for which unit I decide to keep her with, the important thing to consider is the number of movement points you get every turn is dependent on the slowest unit in your hero's army. So if the only unit you have in your army is fast, which are Griffins, then she'll get a lot more movement points than if the only unit she had was an archer, for example. There is a skill called logistics, which increases the minimum movement speed of your army, but neither of them have it. So leave her with one Griffin, and that'll kind of make her an effective scout, while Orin does our fighting for the bit of the early game. So we're going to go ahead and send her back this way, so now she can come over here and hit that water wheel. And Orin's going to get into a fight. Bonewalkers are level 1 Necropolis units. They're skeletons, they're undead, and at this point we pretty handily outclass them. And in fact, they might even try to run away from us when we engage them. And yeah, that's exactly what happened. They're going to run away from us. Now, in this particular case, I'd actually let them run. Level 1 units don't give a whole lot of experience, but I'll go ahead and finish off this tutorial just by showing a fight. And here's the battlefield. This is pretty much the core of the game. Every turn, units can move. This shadow indicates where our Griffin can move to. Down here we see the order in which everything moves. And then we have the option to wait, which pushes him to the bottom of the queue if we want to wait for the skeletons to come into range, for example, or we can just defend. Every unit has a special ability. Again, right-clicking on them lets you see. Base units might not have a special ability, but when each unit can upgrade to a stronger version of itself, they will either gain a new ability or their existing one will be improved. Pikemen, for example, they get extra defense when defending, and this is because they were designed to defend your archers. When upgraded to halberdiers, they gain the ability to counterattack before they're attacked. Whereas archers here don't really have any special abilities in their base form, but when they upgrade to marksman, they are able to fire at any distance without a penalty. As it stands, if they try to shoot at these skeletons over here, they'll do half damage because they're too far away. Then once they step in range, they'll do the normal amount of damage. So I had mentioned counterattacking before, and for every round of combat, every unit has one counterattack, meaning when they are attacked at melee, they will counterattack. Meaning, well, first of all, if you have a strong unit that is able to damage a lot of the troops in an enemy stack, then the counterattack you get will be very weak. However, if you have like a single stack of only one unit, you can goad a enemy unit into counterattacking you, and then it will be lost on that one weak unit, while other units can then go attack it and not be hit. That's a kind of a basic aspect of combat. Right now, I'm just going to defend for this turn, let them move a little closer to me, and as you can see now, the skeletons are in range. I'll go ahead and attack them now. And the special ability of Bone Walkers is that once they're defeated, a few more of them come back from the dead. That's really the whole theme of Necropolis, is that there's a whole bunch of the undead. I can also cast spells by clicking on this button down here, and I neglected to actually buy anything other than Wizard Eye for Orin. If I had remembered to buy Bless, then I might be casting it right now. But really just to show it off. I don't need it to win this fight at all. These are pretty weak units. So I'm going to go ahead and move these guys down here. And now my archers, who are ranged units, I can move within this shadow, which isn't very far. But if I click on these guys, you see the little broken arrow icon that indicates they're still too far away, 10 hexes. So it's going to do 29 to 58 damage. Once they get a little closer, it'll actually do twice that. You might also see that it says I have 6 shots left. Every ranged unit has a certain number of shots that they have until they're out and they can only fight at melee. The third war machine that I talked about, we already went over medical tents and ballistas. The third one is called an ammo cart, and that gives your ranged units unlimited shots, at least until somebody comes along and destroys it. As you can see, these war machines also act as physical entities in battle, and a lot of times enemy units want to go pound on that instead of your troops. So it's really helpful even if you don't even need their primary effects. So we'll go ahead and shoot these guys, and as you can see, that killed quite a few of them. If you're not sure, because this combat's going by pretty fast, we can click down here to see a battle log of everything that's happened. And we'll go ahead and attack these guys, and the fight's over, and I have lost no units from it. And let's go grab our spoils. Let's see what these Bone Walkers were defending. And then again, more treasure chests. Right now I need a little bit more money because I want to start building more, and I've kind of depleted my resources buying these units. Plus, the higher your level gets, the more experience you need in order to keep going up a level. So the experience becomes less and less useful the higher it goes. But I think I will take the experience for this, kind of balance it out. And there's air magic, which that sunray scroll we found over there, that's an air spell. If I did not have air magic, that scroll would have let me cast sunray even without this skill. But because this is a Might Hero, I'm not going to be offered magic skills very often, so it's in my best interest to take one if it comes along, if it's something I want. But the spells that we saw, Cure and Bless, the ones that I really want on him are water spells, so I'm going to go ahead and stick with Armor for now. Oh, I got 2 levels from that. Yeah, I'll go with leadership on this. And that's... I've gone on a lot longer than I was actually planning on for this, but I did want to... This was supposed to be a very brief introduction on how to play the game, and that just covered the basics, and already this video has gone on for nearly 50 minutes. But there's a lot more to it than this, and just the first few minutes of the game that I've taken 50 minutes to go over normally goes by in about 2 or 3 minutes at most. So there are a lot more advanced things to cover, but I don't want to go into them here. If you've watched this far, well, first of all, thank you. And second of all, by all means, please check out my hack, Another Heroes 3 mod. There's going to be a link in the description. We have a Discord server, and I am always around and happy to listen to whatever people have to say. So thanks again for coming out, and hope to see you soon.